The billionaire sheikh lingered by the towering window of his gilded palace, the desert sun casting a molten glow on the endless dunes beyond. Draped in silks that whispered power and prestige, his eyes darkened with a restless ache no sum of gold could quell. In his world of opulence and command, loneliness clung to him like an unwelcome shadow, an empty throne amid treasures that never soothed his soul. Outside, the air shimmered with heat, laden with the scent of exotic spices and burning amber. Persian rugs sprawled beneath marble pillars, their intricate patterns catching the light like whispered secrets of ancient empires. Yet beyond these walls of splendor, a world vastly different pulsed with a raw, unvarnished life, a world soon to cross the path of this solitary ruler. On a dusty roadside, a poor girl battled the unforgiving sun, sweat slicking her brow as she hurried along barefoot. Her worn cotton dress clung to her slight frame, faded and stained from endless days of toil. A sudden discomfort made her halt. A fragile strap of her bra had twisted cruelly, unforgiving beneath the thin fabric of her blouse. Desperation quickened her breath. With trembling fingers, she reached toward the nearest solace, the cold, unyielding window of a nearby parked car. The glass was a cruel confidant beneath her palms, rough against soft skin as she awkwardly adjusted the strap. The sounds of the bustling street around her blended with the rasp of sand carried on the wind. Every bead of sweat on her skin, every throb of heat in her chest, painted a portrait of vulnerability, masked by fierce resolve. Inside that very car, the billionaire Sheikh watched, unseen, his gaze sharp yet softened by an unfamiliar curiosity. This woman, so removed from his world of decadence, moved with a candid simplicity that cut through his practiced detachment. Her raw humanity stirred something dormant, an ache for connection he had long buried beneath layers of control and cold riches. Conflicted emotions warred inside him, command versus compassion, isolation against the unexpected pull of empathy. His breath caught as their eyes met briefly through the window's reflection. In her wary glance, flickers of fear whispered caution, silently questioning his intentions. Yet beneath that tension lingered a fragile spark, an unspoken understanding of loneliness shared across the chasm of fortune. In that charged moment, the girl's hand brushed against a finely woven bracelet peeking from beneath her sleeve. A delicate heirloom, glinting faintly, far removed from the rags she wore. The subtle gleam hinted at a hidden story, a secret depth beneath her humble exterior. The sheikh's pulse quickened. There was more here than hardship and survival, a mystery beckoning him beyond the surface. Their worlds had collided, a fragile tether formed amidst a vast divide of power and poverty. The question burned in the silent air. Could an empire of gold truly embrace the unyielding spirit of a girl who survived on courage alone? Before the next secret of this dazzling emirate unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if this billionaire sheikh's heart has already captivated you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you think is about to come? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to continue. Thank you for staying with us. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze lingered longer on the frail silhouette outside the car window than any fourth wall of gold or marble that encased him. The girl's hurried breaths, the desperate adjustment of a twisted strap, the faint shimmer of that bracelet beneath faded sleeves, they all wove into a tapestry of mystery he could no longer ignore. A restless pulse stirred beneath the embroidered silk covering his wrist as he stepped away from the glass, retreating into the shadowed corridor of his palace. The weight of command pressed down on him like the relentless desert sun, but beneath it all, a whispering ache grew louder, a quiet rebellion against the isolation of his gilded cage. The palace around him was a treasury of splendor. Walls glimmered with gold leaf, chandeliers spilled crystals like liquid starlight, and fragrant perfumes, rose, jasmine, oud, hovered in the thick air. Yet all the opulence felt hollow when measured against the subtle ache in his chest, the one that had no cure in wealth or power. He thought of the girl again, her resilience etched in the crease of her brow, the stubborn set of her jaw, as if daring the world to break her. The image shadowed his mind like an unsolvable riddle, pulling him toward an unfamiliar place, empathy. That evening, beneath impossibly intricate arches, kissed by moonlight, the Sheikh entertained his closest advisors. Surrounded by murmured plans of alliances and whispers of court intrigues, his eyes remained distant. The luxurious feast laid out, a symphony of rare delicacies, went largely untouched. One advisor, a sharp-eyed man known for his cunning, leaned forward, voice low but eager. "Your Highness, the caravan from the northern trade route reported trouble. Bandits grow bold. Security must be tightened." The Sheikh's response was a blade of silence. For a moment, all the scheming minds in the room hung suspended in the stillness of his gaze. "Send my guards to patrol," he finally said, his voice cold, measured. Yet underneath, disquiet lingered, a shadow cast by thoughts far from bandits or trade. Back in a less gilded, hidden corner of the city, the girl touched the delicate bracelet that had so captivated the Sheikh's attention. It was an heirloom, yes, but not merely a family treasure. It was a token of a life she'd left behind, a past buried beneath layers of hardship. Her name was Layla. She had once belonged to a world of privilege before the sands shifted and fortunes fell away. The bracelet was the only link to the shattered kingdom of her childhood, a silent promise of secrets she dared not speak aloud. It was the reason she had escaped the suffocating walls of noble servitude and slipped into the dusty streets of trade and toil. The next morning, the palace awoke to the rising sun filtering through courtyards, alive with blooming bougainvillea. The Sheikh, unwilling to shake the restless pull of curiosity, ordered his driver to retrace the route he had glimpsed the girl moments ago. As the car wound through winding alleys and crowded bazaars bursting with color and chaos, the contrast to his immaculate palace was stark and visceral. The call of merchants, the clatter of hooves, the scent of spices interlaced with sweat and earth. This world was a tapestry of struggle and survival. They stopped near a bustling market. The Sheikh stepped out, feeling the heat prickling his skin, the unrelenting sun beating down as if mocking his finery. But it was here, amid the clamor and dust, that he caught sight of her. Layla moved with the same fierce determination, eyes scanning for threats, yet carrying a fleeting softness when she thought herself unseen. Their eyes met again, this time with no glass between them, no veils of wealth or poverty. In that fleeting contact, a silent narrative spoke volumes. Two worlds bridged by fragile hope, bound by unspoken loneliness. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady but cautious. "Why do you follow me?" The Sheikh's lips curved into a faint, almost reluctant smile. "Because you carry a secret worth knowing." Layla's gaze hardened. "Secrets belong to those who can protect them, Sheikh. You, with all your gold and power, you don't understand what it means to survive on shadows." He stepped closer, the desert heat wrapping their forms like a physical tether. "Maybe it's time I learned." Their exchange was interrupted by a harsh cry, a raised voice from the marketplace. A group of men shoved past, snatching a young boy's fruit basket. Laughter cruel and unyielding. Without hesitation, Layla's steps quickened toward the commotion. The Sheikh followed, a guardian moved not just by impulse, but by a growing awareness that this girl, scarred yet unbroken, had already begun to break down the walls he'd built around his heart. When she confronted the thieves, her voice rang clear, sharp and fearless, despite her small frame. "Leave him alone." A tense pause, then the men drew back, eyes wary of her fierce glare. The Sheikh watched, his pulse thundering in a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. Here was courage untamed, raw and luminous. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in hues of blood and gold, they found themselves walking side by side through the narrow lanes. Layla's voice was quieter now, threading through the dusk. "He who is born into power cannot always choose his destiny." The Sheikh glanced at her, understanding the paradox that both bound and loosened them. And he who has power often hides deeper wounds than the poorest beggar. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from a nearby alleyway, a figure cloaked in silence, eyes sharp and calculating. The Sheikh's hand instinctively moved to a hidden dagger at his belt. Layla's breath caught. The moment hung suspended on a knife's edge. The stranger stepped forward, voice smooth yet dangerous. "Your Highness, there is news you must hear about the bracelet your companion wears." Layla's eyes widened, fingers tightening around the delicate heirloom. The Sheikh's gaze hardened, the shadows of palace intrigue darkening rapidly. The truth behind that bracelet was no simple secret. It was the key to a conspiracy that could shatter empires and hearts alike. And the first thread had just unraveled. The stranger's words hung in the cool evening air, like a threat cloaked in silk. The Sheikh's gaze sharpened, the flicker of candlelight casting jagged shadows across his face. He took a step forward, the edge of his cloak brushing the cobblestones, muscles coiling beneath his finely woven robes. "Explain," he demanded, voice low but steel strong. The man inclined his head with a calculated calm. "There are whispers, Your Highness. The bracelet is not merely a keepsake. It belongs to a lost lineage, one with ties that could fracture alliances and ignite old vendettas. Those who seek it will stop at nothing. Layla's breath caught. Her fingers clenched tighter around the delicate heirloom hidden beneath her sleeve. Her eyes, fierce and guarded, met the Sheikh's. The silent question between them felt heavier than any weapon. The marketplace had faded into a muted backdrop, the chaotic clamor replaced by the sudden weight of unspoken danger. The desert stars peeked through the dusk sky, cold and distant, as if witnesses to secrets better left buried. "Who are these they?" the Sheikh pressed. The stranger's eyes glinted with shadowed knowledge. A faction within the palace, ones who would keep power at any cost and silence threats before they bloom. A ripple of cold slid down the Sheikh's spine. The threads of conspiracy were closer than he had imagined, woven deep into his realm. And in the center of it all, this girl, Layla, carrying a key to ancient wounds and a future yet to be written. Layla's voice broke the tension, soft but resolute. "I have no intention of handing this bracelet over to anyone. Its secrets are mine to bear." The Sheikh studied her then, not as a commander surveying a subject, but as a man unearthing something fragile and fierce beneath layers of survival and silence. He saw beyond the dirt and worn fabric, the spark of nobility, the resilience born of sacrifice, and the quiet defiance that even his gold could not buy. "I will protect you," he declared, surprising himself as the words left his mouth. "Not because of the bracelet, because I see what you carry inside, and it scares those who clench power with cold hands." Their proximity shifted something, a crack in the walls each had built around themselves. The air between them thickened with unsaid promises and a cautious hope neither dared name aloud. But before this fragile moment could bloom, footsteps echoed sharply against the stone alley. Shadows detached themselves from the gathering night, figures emerging with silent menace. The Sheikh's hand instinctively dropped to the carved handle of a dagger hidden beneath his robes. His eyes flared with a predator's focus, every ounce of royal command honing into the immediate threat. Layla stepped beside him, small but unyielding, ready to stand in the storm. The lead assailant's voice was a venomous hiss. "Keep the bracelet. It's the last thing you'll treasure." A tense silence fell. Then, in a movement bred from years of command and survival, the Sheikh's cloak whipped through the air, striking with a sharpness that told of deadly precision. The dagger sang steel as it found the space. "Gaze. I never asked for this path." "No one does," he admitted, the first hint of vulnerability breaking through his customary stoic veneer. "But some journeys choose us." They moved through the winding alleys, the opulence of the palace a distant memory swallowed by the raw pulse of the city. The scent of oud lingered in his clothes, mingling with the dust and faint aroma of street food, a reminder of how far removed his worlds were. Yet under the harsh light of a flickering lantern, two souls connected, fragile and fierce, the billionaire Sheikh, bound by heritage and power, and Layla, a girl haunted by secrets and shadows. As they parted that night, each carried the weight of the other's silent promise, an unvoiced trust forged in fire and fear. but deep within the gilded heart of the palace. Far from the star-swept streets, a darker presence stirred. Eyes, cold and unblinking, watched maps sprawled across marble, tracing lines of power and plotting downfall. A whisper escaped the lips of the shadowed figure. The bracelet is only the beginning. Soon, the empire will tremble, and the Sheikh's greatest battle will not be over wealth, but over the very soul of his kingdom. The desert wind howled outside, carrying secrets buried beneath the dunes. The first thread had been pulled, and unraveling it would lead to a storm neither fortune nor fire could contain. The marketplace's chaotic murmur faded behind the heavy oak doors of the palace, swallowed by the marble grandeur and fragrant air thick with jasmine and oud. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows over the intricate mosaic floors, reflecting the tempest quietly brewing in the heart of the billionaire sheikh. His eyes, dark pools of restrained emotion, lingered on the delicate bracelet tucked beneath Layla's worn sleeve, a symbol far heavier than its fragile gold might suggest. In the depths of his chest, a storm raged, between the cold command carved by years of duty and the unexpected tenderness that Layla's presence ignited. She was no longer just a whisper on the edge of his world. She had become a beacon of something painful, yet achingly necessary. Layla's voice cut through the charged silence, steady but wary. "What do they want with this bracelet, Sheikh? Why does it matter so much?" He stepped closer, the scent of desert winds and palace incense wrapping them in a cocoon of tension. "Not all power lies in the palace walls," he said lowly. "There are those who would see this city crumble rather than let a secret like this slip from their grasp." Her gaze flickered, betraying a shadow beneath her fierce exterior. "I've hidden this for years. It's not just a piece of jewelry. It's the last remnant I have of a life stolen from me." He reached out, fingers brushing against the rough fabric of her sleeve, a touch as tentative as a desert breeze. "Then we will protect it together." The promise hung between them, heavy with unspoken hopes and fears. A sudden rustle from the shadows startled them both. From the adjoining hall, a figure emerged, slim, dressed in the muted black of palace servants, but with eyes sharp and unyielding as obsidian. "Your Highness," the man began, voice hushed yet urgent. "There are rumors stirring, whispers that the bracelet's secrets could ignite not just vendettas, but war." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, the weight of his crown pressing deeper against his resolve. "And who stirs these whispers?" "Faction leaders, those who believe a lost heir threatens their claim. They move unseen, with poison in their words and daggers in their shadows." Layla's breath hitched. Her fingers clenched the bracelet, knuckles whitening. "I am no heir," she whispered, voice fierce, though layered in pain. "I am nothing but a girl who survived." The Sheikh stepped protectively in front of her, his form radiating a regal strength that seemed carved from the desert itself. "Survival is the fiercest heirloom of all." Heavy footsteps echoed in the distance, a reminder that danger was never far, and trust harder to come by. Down in the city's labyrinthine quarters, a shadowy figure watched screens flickering with images of the palace corridors and bustling markets. A thin smile curled the edge of his lips, cold and cruel. So close, he murmured, and yet so unaware. The bracelet will be the key, but not the end. The Sheikh's greatest trial will come when shadows of the past threaten to consume the future. Back within the palace walls, the billionaire Sheikh and Layla moved cautiously through ornate halls, their steps soft against the polished marble. The conversation grew quieter. Each word weighted with meaning. "Why did you leave the life you once had?" he asked, voice barely more than a breath. Layla's eyes darkened, reflections of starless nights and stolen youth. Because power felt like chains wrapped in gold. The world I knew, it suffocated me. Here, she touched the bracelet again. This is the only piece of a freedom I ever dared to imagine. He studied her, the harsh lines of his face softening. And yet here you stand, braver than any ruler I've known. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability cracked the armor of royalty. Sheikh's gaze dropped to the bracelet, then to Layla's determined face. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets through the palace windows, as stars glittered coldly against an ink-black sky. Suddenly, a sharp clatter echoed from the courtyard below. The Sheikh's senses snapped to alert. The pulse of danger quickened. He reached instinctively for the hidden dagger at his side, his silhouette a blend of grace and lethal precision. Layla mirrored his readiness, a fierce spark igniting in her eyes. They hurried to the balcony, overlooking the courtyard. Below, figures swirled between columns, voices low but urgent. One man held a folded parchment, the seal, unmistakable. "It's a summons," the Sheikh murmured, "from those who command the unseen powers within the palace walls." Layla's breath trembled as she peered through the gilt railing. "They know about the bracelet." He nodded grimly. "And they will stop at nothing to claim it, to own you." The fragile thread between them tightened, a tether made of defiance and unyielding will. In that moment, the Sheikh felt the sharp sting of a truth long buried. Sometimes, the greatest battles were fought not with armies, but with hearts laid bare in trust and betrayal. The moon cast silvered blades of light upon their faces, etching every shadow and every flicker of emotion. Layla's voice broke the heavy silence, barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" The Sheikh's eyes met hers, fiery, determined, vulnerable. "We fight, not just for this city, but for the chance to rewrite our destinies." A sudden crack of thunder ripped across the horizon, the desert sky tearing open in a flash of lightning. And beneath that raw tempest, a chilling realization settled deep into their bones. Some secrets refuse to stay buried, and this one would haunt the Sheikh's empire long before dawn. The night had barely settled when the echo of hurried footsteps shattered the fragile calm of the palace corridors. The billionaire Sheikh's fingers tightened around the edge of the marble balustrade, his eyes narrowing as they tracked the shadows slipping through the hallways like whispers of betrayal. Layla's breath hitched beside him, her hand instinctively clutching the fragile bracelet hidden beneath her sleeve. The weight of the night pressed heavy against their skin, a silent reminder that the dangers they faced had only just begun. He turned to her, voice low but unyielding. "You must trust me. No matter how deep this darkness runs, I will hold the line." her gaze locked onto his, a mixture of defiance and fragile hope shimmering in the depths. And if the darkest shadows come from within your own court? The question hung between them, fragile as crystal, yet sharp enough to cut through steel. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, his regal facade cracking with the burden of unspoken truths. Then we fight together, or we perish alone. Outside, the desert wind whipped against the palace walls, carrying with it the scent of sand and secrets. Somewhere deep within, the city seemed to pulse, alive with unseen eyes and silent predators lurking just beyond the lantern glow. That night, beneath the vaulted ceilings embroidered with golden history, the Sheikh convened a council far more clandestine than any ordinary meeting. Advisors gathered, not in a grand hall, but in a shadowed chamber scented with oud and the faint, bitter tang of fear. Every faction senses the shift, one whispered, eyes darting. The bracelet stirs unrest, old bloodlines awaken, and those hungry for power move like vipers. The Sheikh's gaze was cold, the fire of a man used to command burning fiercely. Names. I want names. Those who would threaten the balance of this realm will learn what happens to traitors. Across the glittering room, where golden lanterns bounced soft light off polished stones, the tension was palpable. But outside that safety, Layla's world peeled back like fragile parchment, revealing layers of hardship and unyielding courage few could fathom. Later, in the solitude of the inner gardens where jasmine blossoms bowed under the moonlight, Layla's voice trembled with memories she rarely voiced. They think I'm just a girl who forgot her place. But this bracelet, it is a promise, a punishment, and a burden. The Sheikh listened, his fingers absently brushing the cool marble fountain, as the sound of trickling water barely masked the thunder in his own chest. I see what they do not. Strength forged from fire and loss. Their eyes met in the luminescent glow, a language without words, speaking of alliances born from pain and hope. For a long moment, the world outside faded to silence, the desert night holding its breath. But peace was a stranger here. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors burst open. A figure slipped inside, cloak drawn tight, face shadowed yet unmistakable. The council is compromised, the man hissed, eyes flicking from the Sheikh to Layla with a predator's intensity. They've sent a sentinel to ensure the bracelet never leaves your side. Layla's pulse hammered, her grip tightening around the relic she knew held the fragile threads of her lost heritage. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a growl. Who dares? Someone closer than you think, the shadow murmured, stepping back into the night as swiftly as he had come. The quiet that followed was unbearable, filled with the weight of imminent threat. Without hesitation, the Sheikh seized Layla's hand, their fingers interlacing in a silent vow, a fortress sealed by trust amid treachery. We must move, he whispered, urgency blazing in his dark eyes. Tonight, the palace is not a sanctuary. Their steps were swift but measured as they navigated secret passageways adorned with faded tapestries and ancient runes, silent witnesses to countless stories of power and loss. Outside, the city seethed with hidden dangers. Lanterns flickered as shadows merged and parted, and the distant cry of a stray dog was swallowed by the endless desert silence. Layla's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Why do you risk everything for me, Sheikh?" The answer was a breath, a confession carried on the desert air. "Because in your fight, I hear my own loneliness echoed. Perhaps, in protecting you, I save myself." Their journey led them to a forgotten garden, an oasis of wild roses tangled beneath crumbling arches, forgotten by all but time. There, beneath a solitary olive tree, the Sheikh paused. His eyes traced the delicate bracelet glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This is more than a token," he said. "It's a beacon, a light that could either destroy us or guide us through the shadows." Layla met his gaze, the fierce resolve shining brighter than any gem. "Then we must be ready to face whatever darkness our pasts have cast." A sudden rustle shattered the fragile stillness. From the darkness emerged a woman cloaked in silk, her eyes sharp with purpose. "Sheikh," she said, voice cool and commanding, "there are those among us who will stop at nothing to possess the bracelet. And they've already made their move." The Sheikh's brow furrowed as he stepped protectively in front of Layla. "Then this battle is no longer just hers. It is ours to fight." The woman's gaze bore into him, unyielding. "Prepare yourself. The next dawn will bring war's first cruel tide, and only the strongest will survive." A chilling silence followed, broken only by the whisper of the desert winds weaving through shattered remnants of forgotten dreams. As the palace walls seemed to close in around them, the Sheikh realized that the empire he had built on gold and power was at the mercy of a fragile piece of jewelry, and the woman who carried it. The bracelet pulsed faintly against Layla's wrist, as if alive with secrets waiting to be unleashed. Secrets that would shake the foundations of his world and test the limits of his heart. And beneath the vast desert sky, a lone figure watched from a distant dune, eyes glinting with dark ambition. "The game begins," the voice whispered, cold and sharp as desert night. The billionaire Sheikh's empire was about to face a storm, not of sand and sun, but of shadows and broken promises, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about power, love, and sacrifice. The moon hung heavy over the palace, its silver light spilling across marble floors and gilded archways. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer tonight, as if the darkness itself feared what was coming. The billionaire Sheikh moved through the silent halls with the quiet grace of a predator, his gaze sharp, scanning for threats hidden in the labyrinth of silk and stone. Beside him, Layla's fingers trembled slightly around the delicate bracelet, a fragile yet heavy relic that now felt like a tether, binding two worlds against their will. Her breath caught with every step, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down like the desert sun at its zenith. The palace no longer felt like a sanctuary. It had turned into a cage with invisible bars forged from secrets and lies. His voice broke the tension, low and steady. "The palace listens," he murmured, "but it does not forgive." His gaze lingered on her, searching the fierce defiance, clashing with her vulnerability. "You carry more than just a bracelet, Layla, and so do I." She met his eyes without flinching, though a flicker of doubt crossed her features. "I'm tired of running from shadows, but I know I cannot fight them alone." A sudden rustling echoed behind them. Both spun, eyes blazing with readiness, but no one emerged from the shadows. Only the faint scent of jasmine and the lingering chill of night air. The silence tightened around them, a silent countdown to an unseen storm. As they approached the private chambers, the sharp echo of whispered voices spilled from behind a heavy curtain. The Sheikh's instincts thrummed. Like a desert storm rising, he signaled Layla to stay back and slipped into the half-lit room. There, in the flickering glow of lanterns swaying gently, a group of palace insiders gathered, whispers woven with venom, eyes filled with shadows darker than the night itself. One man, his face carved with cold intent, spoke with barely concealed disdain. "The bracelet belongs to a bloodline that traces back centuries, a threat to all who hold power. If she draws the Sheikh too close, our carefully balanced empire risks collapse." The Sheikh's jaw tightened, every word like a blade striking delicate veins. "You threaten the order I built," he said, voice slicing through the thick tension. "You threaten me." His presence filled the room, a tempest restrained behind regal composure. The men shifted uneasily. Loyalty is to the realm, not to one man blinded by sentimentality, another hissed. Outside, Layla waited, heart hammering against ribs like a captive bird. The air was thick with the scent of musk and perfume, mingling with the distant echoes of the city's restless pulse. Her thoughts tangled between fear and fierce resolve. She fingered the bracelet once more, its cold gold grounding her amidst the whirl. Suddenly, the door behind her clicked softly. The Sheikh stepped out, his face a mask of icy command, but eyes softened by silent promise. "We move tonight." No questions were asked, no hesitation allowed. Together they slipped through secret passageways winding beneath the palace, like arteries carrying lifeblood and danger alike. The walls around them whispered tales of betrayal, power, and sacrifice, echoes of those who had fought, fallen, or vanished before them. Outside, the city's night air was thick with anticipation. Lanterns flickered in crowded markets, and the distant howl of a lone desert wolf sliced the stillness. The divide between palace and street blurred beneath the weight of their shared peril. Layla glanced sideways at the Sheikh, his silhouette a dark flame against the star-studded sky. "Why do you risk everything for a girl who carries a past you barely understand?" His breath was a slow exhale, the desert wind threading through his words. "Because this empire is more than gold and walls. It's about what heart remains when everything else falls away." The fragile bond between them intensified, a delicate dance of trust, fear, and unspoken promises. Their footsteps faltered as they reached an ancient gate, long forgotten by most, hidden beneath vines heavy with fragrant blossoms. The Sheikh's hand lingered on the rusted latch, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond. As the gate creaked open, a figure stepped from the shadows, a woman cloaked in midnight silk, eyes sharp with knowledge and threat. Her voice was a slow, cold drawl. "You think the bracelet is your only danger? The enemy is closer than you believe. Tonight, the palace will bleed secrets." The Sheikh's gaze darkened, muscles coiling with lethal intensity. "Then we will face whatever comes, together." Layla's hand found his, their fingers entwining in a grip that spoke of defiance and fragile hope. Around them, the desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching. But far above, hidden behind a curtain of sand and night, a pair of eyes gleamed with merciless hunger. A smile, thin and cruel, split the shadowed face of a man who had waited too long for this moment. "The bracelet," he whispered, voice like broken glass, "will be the death of kings." And as the wind swept across the sprawling emirate, carrying with it whispers of war and betrayal, the first strike in a silent battle was poised to shatter not only the Sheikh's reign, but the very soul of his empire. The night's heavy silence pressed against the palace walls as the Billionaire Sheikh and Layla tread carefully through shadowed corridors, their footsteps barely echoing on cold marble. The air was thick with jasmine and distant incense, yet beneath this fragrant calm, an undercurrent of danger thrummed fiercely between them. He kept his hand close to the hidden dagger at his waist, eyes flickering constantly to unseen corners, muscles taut beneath silk brocades embroidered with gold. Layla's fingers never left the delicate bracelet clasped beneath her sleeve, a fragile relic with the weight of destinies long buried. Her breath came shallow, but her spine remained resolute. "We can't afford mistakes." The Sheikh's voice was low, roughened by a growing storm inside. "The palace is no longer a haven. Every shadow could conceal an enemy." Layla's gaze met his, steady, yet shadowed by a history she barely dared confront. "And yet together, we stand stronger than they ever expected." They emerged into a narrow gallery lit only by moonlight filtering through intricately latticed windows. The glitter of stars beyond seemed distant, cold, indifferent to the tempest poised to shatter their fragile alliance. Still, in this small sanctuary, a fragile warmth flickered between them, an ember of trust, unspoken but fiercely guarded. Suddenly, distant footsteps fractured the night's quiet, hurried, measured, and heavily armed. The Sheikh's dark eyes sharpened to predatory alertness. "They come," he murmured. "We have little time." Without hesitation, he pulled Layla into a concealed alcove behind a towering tapestry depicting ancient battles. The thick fabric swallowed their forms, cocooning them in shadows as muted voices spilled into the hall. "Tonight, the throne will bleed." A cold whisper slid beneath the stone arches. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitened as he grasped Layla's wrist, the fragile gold chain beneath her sleeve warm against his skin. "You are more than just a symbol, Layla. You are the pulse of this battle." Her breath hitched, eyes wide, not with fear, but with the fierce kindling of defiance. "Then let them come. I will not be a pawn in wars orchestrated by vultures. A shiver of recognition passed between them, an unspoken pact forged in the crucible of peril. He saw in her not just the girl who fled gilded cages, but a warrior who bore her scars like armor. The echo of footsteps grew closer, distant lanterns swinging at the corridor's edge, casting flickers of gold and shadow. The sheikh slid silently from the alcove, fingers curling around the hilt of his dagger, eyes burning with ruthless resolve. Layla followed without hesitation, each step a drumbeat of courage against an encroaching darkness. They rounded a corner into the heart of the palace's secret corridors. Walls lined with faded tapestries whispered tales of betrayal and conquest, their threads frayed like the fragile trust now binding the two strangers. "Do you ever fear," Layla's voice was barely a whisper, "that this will consume you, that your empire will crumble beneath the weight of secrets?" He paused, the tension in his frame loosening for a heartbeat. The vast loneliness behind his eyes flickered briefly beneath the veneer of command. "I fear the silence more, the emptiness of ruling a kingdom without a soul to return to." A slow, bitter smile brushed her lips, touched with empathy. "Then perhaps your empire needs less gold and more heart." The sheikh's gaze softened, the desert wind outside seeming to carry the warmth of those words. For a fleeting moment, the cold palace walls melted away, leaving just two souls searching for sanctuary amid ruin. Their respite was shattered by a harsh bark from the shadows, a soldier stepping forth, clad in black and crimson, eyes sharp with uncompromising duty. "Your Highness, the faction's enforcers have breached the northern gate. They're advancing within the inner sanctum." A cold fury ignited in the sheikh's chest, his voice a blade cutting through the tension. "Then we meet them, not as victims, but as rulers of this fate." Layla's hand found his wrist in a grip that spoke of unyielding solidarity. "I stand with you, whatever storm awaits." Together, they surged forward, twin flames woven from the harsh desert night, undaunted and resolute. The palace corridors transformed into a battleground. Echoes of footsteps and the clatter of armor bounced against gilded walls, decorated with ancient calligraphy. Shadows twisted and leapt as figures clad in black emerged from hidden doorways, faces masked, but intentions brutal. Without hesitation, the sheikh moved with the effortless command of a born leader. His dagger flashed in the pale light, a streak of lethal grace that cut down threat after threat. At his side, Layla's courage burned equally fierce, fists clenched and voice unwavering as she battled alongside him. Not a victim, but a warrior forged by loss. The air thickened with tension, and the scent of sweat, spices, and steel. The sound of clashing blades mingled with breathless grunts and cries. A symphony of survival played beneath crystal chandeliers. Yet amidst the chaos, the sheikh's eyes never left Layla's determined face. In her fierce gaze, he glimpsed the promise of something beyond power. An empire built not on gold, but on hearts unbroken by fear. The clash began to ebb as the last attacker fled into the labyrinthine darkness. The silence that followed was a living, pulsing thing, heavy with unspoken truths and fragile victories. The sheikh lowered his dagger slowly, every muscle aching but eyes blazing with new-found purpose. "They thought to break me with shadows," he said, voice rough but resolute. "But they have awakened a storm they cannot contain." Layla's breath came steady now, a fleeting smile breaking through the grime and tension. "Then let it rage. Together we will be the tempest." He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, an intimate gesture, tender amidst ruin. "No secret, no betrayal will sever what we begin tonight." Her fingers intertwined with his, a silent vow carved from pain and hope. Far beyond the palace walls, the desert wind howled its ancient warnings. Stars blinked coldly above, bearing witness to the fragile alliance kindled beneath their gaze. But in the labyrinth of shadowed halls, a solitary figure observed, the master of whispers and schemer of betrayals, cloaked not just in darkness, but in a secret far deadlier than any blade. He smiled thinly, eyes glittering with merciless intent. "The bracelet is only the beginning," he whispered, "and soon everything they cherish will burn." The marble halls echoed faintly beneath their measured steps, the shadows cast by flickering lanterns stretching long and tangled, like the secrets woven through the palace walls. The billionaire Sheikh's grip tightened around Layla's hand, his dark eyes scanning every corridor, every whisper of motion beyond the heavy tapestries that guarded the realm's deepest mysteries. Between them, the delicate bracelet lay hidden under her sleeve, a fragile relic, pulsing not just with gold, but the weight of destinies that refused to be buried. The night air was thick with jasmine and the faint burn of oud, merging with the tension that clung to their skin like a second shadow. "We tread on razor's edge," the sheikh murmured, voice low as the desert breeze, "and every step could unravel everything." Layla's breath wavered, but her gaze remained steady, fierce even in the dim light. "Then we must be sharper. Shadows cut deep, but a sharper blade cuts deeper still." They moved deeper into the palace's concealed passages, the grandeur of gold and silk fading behind them into a tapestry of worn stone and fading echoes. Each step carried them further from the gilded confinement of his world, and closer to the raw pulse of a truth neither fully understood. Suddenly, the sharp clang of metal rang out, the unmistakable clash of blade against blade. The sheikh's body tensed, instincts drawn from years of both command and survival. He signaled to Layla, his fingers curling protectively around hers, and together they slipped toward the sound. Around a corner, beneath the cold gaze of an arched window, two figures battled silently in the muted torchlight. The faint glint of steel flickered as their weapons danced, but deadly ballet. The sheikh's presence was a sudden force. "Enough!" His voice sliced through the tension like a whip. Both assailants stepped back, eyes wary and calculating. One was a palace guard, his loyalty doubtlessly fractured. The other, a cloaked messenger with eyes like ice, held a sealed scroll tightly in trembling hands. "The factions move faster than you suspect, Your Highness," the messenger hissed, voice laced with urgency and fear. "They intend to strike at dawn." The bracelet draws attention like a beacon. The sheikh's gaze hardened, the weight of his crown sinking heavier. What might they want? To unravel with dawn's first light. The guard's face flickered with unease, but held firm. To claim the bracelet, or to destroy it. Either way, to claim or cast down Layla. Layla felt the breath catch in her throat, fingers tightening around the hidden heirloom. The threat was no longer distant whispers or veiled insinuations. It was a promise of fire looming just beyond the horizon. "We cannot falter," the Sheikh declared, voice resolute, every syllable steeped in both command and a rare vulnerability. "Prepare the palace defenses, and find out which among our own have turned their blades toward us." Her eyes met his, the fierce flame of trust igniting between them, despite the storm gathering overhead. "Then I stand with you, Sheikh, not just as bearer of secrets, but as your equal." For a heartbeat, the quiet space between them brimmed with unsaid words. The fragile tendrils of hope and fear intertwined tightly. But the palace offered no reprieve. As they turned to marshal their forces, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement caught the Sheikh's eye. A shadow slipping behind a column, fading into the darkness with practiced grace. He moved with lethal precision, vanishing into the halls like a desert ghost, leaving Layla to follow with steady steps. Her heart pounding, both with fear and a defiant calm. They arrived at the private chamber where the council had gathered, its walls lined with ancient mosaics reflecting the flickering candlelight. The faces inside bore masks of polished loyalty, yet the eyes revealed rivalries, sharp and silent, like poisoned daggers. "You have allowed a threat to flourish in plain sight," one elder accused, voice cold and accusing. The Sheikh's gaze burned through the veils of deception. "I have not permitted anything except the awakening of a truth long buried. Those who fear that truth will fall by the strength of their own treachery." Murmurs rose, but they were swiftly silenced as the doors burst open, revealing the tense figures of palace guards flanking a young envoy. A folded parchment lay in the envoy's hands, its seal broken and ink barely dry. "The northern gate has been breached," the envoy announced, voice steady despite urgency. "Hostiles spill into the inner sanctum. Loyalty is fractured. The rebels move like shadows through the marble halls." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, every muscle in his body coiling beneath silk and gold. "They will not only seek the bracelet," he growled, "but the heart of this empire, its very soul." Layla's hand found his, once again, their fingers locking in a chain of steel and trust. "Then we burn brighter than any shadow." A distant cry shattered the tense calm, the echo of battle spilling from the vaulted corridors. The scent of smoke and dust began to wreathe the air, mixing with the rose and jasmine that had once adorned these sacred walls. Amid the chaos, their eyes met. A silent vow, passing between two souls, adrift in a tempest of power and desire. But as the palace trembled with the pulse of war, unknown to them, a darker figure watched from the depths below, cloaked in midnight silk, eyes glinting with merciless resolve. In one hand, a slender blade, in the other, a shard of shattered mirror, fragmented like the empire's fragile hope. A whisper slid from his lips, cold and inevitable. End the girl's rebellion before it awakens the city. Let the bracelet shatter beneath the weight of betrayal. Outside, the desert wind howled through the open windows, carrying a message as old as the dunes. Nothing gilded in gold can hide from the fire that shapes destinies. And somewhere deep within the palace, the first spark of ruin was already catching, ready to consume all they held dear. The dawn crept cautiously over the vast emirate, the first rays of sun stitching golden threads across the palace's ornate walls. The air held a fragile stillness, as if even the desert itself was holding its breath after the night's storm of secrets and shadows. The billionaire Sheikh stood on the highest balcony, his silhouette carved by the soft glow that promised a new beginning. Beside him, Layla's fingers rested lightly over the delicate bracelet that had stirred so much chaos and courage. Its weight no longer felt like a burden, but a symbol of survival and hope, anchoring not just her past, but the path they would forge together. Their eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them. The unyielding walls of the palace, once prisons of suspicion and betrayal, now seemed to shimmer with the promise of change. The Empire of Gold was no longer a lonely throne. It had become a home. Inside the grand hall, the once fractured council gathered as one, their faces no longer veiled in doubt, but marked by resolve. The conspirators who had sought to shatter the fragile peace were brought into light, not with merciless revenge, but with justice tempered by mercy. The Sheikh's voice, steady and commanding, echoed through the chamber. Power must serve the people, not the greed of the few. Let this day mark the end of shadows within our walls and the dawn of unity. Voices rose in agreement, the once subtle fractures now healed by truth and accountability. Where distrust had festered, there was now a cautious but genuine rebuilding of trust. Later, in the palace gardens that had mirrored the turmoil of recent nights, a new harmony unfolded. Blooms of wild roses and jasmine danced in the gentle breeze, their fragrance weaving through the air like a whispered blessing. The moon, now fading with the morning light, had sown seeds of peace in the hearts of two enduring souls. The Sheikh and Layla walked side by side along the marble path, their steps unhurried, soaked in quiet strength. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek with tenderness born of trials shared and battles fought, not just against enemies without, but the fears within. "You are no longer alone," he said softly, "and neither am I." Her smile, hesitant at first, bloomed into radiant certainty. "Together, we are stronger than any storm." The bracelet glimmered faintly beneath her sleeve, a silent testament to battles conquered and a future claimed. It was no longer a secret to hide or a prize to protect. It was a beacon illuminating a life rewritten by courage and love. Word of the Sheikh's transformation spread beyond the palace walls, reaching distant corners of the emirate. The people, long accustomed to whispered fear and veiled uncertainty, now breathed freely, inspired by the emblem of change that radiated from their ruler and the woman who had tamed the storm within him. In the quiet moments, away from the tapestry of political intrigue and whispered alliances, the two found solace in vulnerability. Layla spoke of dreams long deferred, the fragile hope she had carried through years of hardship, and the Sheikh, once a man camouflaged in silks and solitude, shared glimpses of the boy who had once believed in a world kinder than the one shaped by gold and power. Under the vast desert sky, their laughter mingled with the soft song of the evening breeze, a melody that promised healing and the renewal of spirit. Days turned to weeks, and the palace transformed not only in appearance, but in essence. Walls that had echoed with suspicion now echoed with music and merriment. Courtyards bloomed with gardens, tended by hands once weary from strife. The empire, vast and ancient, pulsed with the heartbeat of its people, connected at last by shared hope. One evening, beneath the canvas of stars and lantern light, the Sheikh and Layla stood before their closest allies and kin. The palace glittered with celebration, a tapestry of light, color, and the brilliant warmth of reconciliation. With a voice steady and full, the Sheikh declared not only their union, but the promise of a reign tempered by justice, compassion, and unbreakable partnership. As Layla stepped beside him, the weight of the bracelet turned from a chain to a crown, a symbol not of lost pasts, but of futures authored by love and courage. Their eyes sparkled with unspoken vows, to guard the fragile trust they had forged, to nurture the empire not with iron fist but open hand, and to build a legacy that would stand far beyond gold and stone. The wind whispered through the open windows, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine and the promise of a dawn where shadows would no longer rule. On the rooftop, the desert stretched endlessly, silent and eternal, bearing witness to a love born through trials, a ruler reborn through grace, and a story sealed within hearts, forever intertwined. Together, the billionaire Sheikh and Layla faced the horizon, hand in hand, their silhouettes embraced by the golden light of a realm renewed. The bracelet gleamed softly, a reminder that the greatest treasures are not those kept in vaults, but those forged within souls brave enough to love and forgive. The echoes of the past had faded, replaced by the steady pulse of hope and the enduring promise of a love that conquered all.